Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I always start out with a question, and I am going off script today, and I'm going to start with a rant and rave because this topic today just really kind of bothers me, and I'm just going to put it out there. And maybe you're with me, and maybe you're not, but we'll see. So, we're going to talk about something that's like super confusing to the average business owner. And so what we do is one of two things. We either scrap the whole idea or we try to find somebody to help us. So let me list off some of these things and see if you have any clue what this is. Okay. I'm going to start with an easy one. Like I hear this all the time, SEO. Okay. What about organic traffic or keywords or ad spend or e-commerce or content creation or Google business profile or social media or this one, Google Analytics? I hear all
Absolutely.
this stuff, right? And I'm like, what the heck is this? So I want two questions answered today from my guests, and
Perfect. I'm ready.
I'll introduce you in a second. I want to know how to get the phone to ring. Okay. And I want to know how to sell more. So those are the questions we're going to talk about. Now, SEO and all these words probably will come up. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Eric Valley. How are you today, my friend?
I'm awesome. Glad to be here,
Awesome.
Dave.
Good. You are the owner of a company called Silver Fox Milwaukee. And for those of you watching on video, he definitely has gray hair. He says he's had it since he was in his 30s. And I still have blonde hair. So I'm thinking I'm the blonde fox. He's the silver fox. So we're like a crime team, okay? So we're
Yeah.
gonna attack this today. So please stay with us because I think we're gonna uncover some really powerful stuff. So I want to ask you, Eric, you at Silver Fox Milwaukee, tell us what it is that you do.
Yeah. So basically, what Silver Fox MKE is a company I just launched in March. I specialize in helping people with websites and specifically helping them get just what you were talking about. How do they get more visits to their website, which in turn makes the phone ring, and that leads to greater sales? That, in a nutshell, is what my company does. I work with companies to drive revenue through their website.
Wow, there you go. So that's the word that I wanted to hear. I didn't want to use it until you did, but this is about revenue. Okay. It doesn't matter how many people show up at your site. It doesn't matter how many people like your stuff on LinkedIn. If you're into egotistical stuff, then great. Then you know what? Followers do matter. But I gotta say, Eric, as I get older, I'm like less concerned about followers and more concerned about revenue. And so, first question right out of the box. Do you get people that are still super concerned about, I want to have X number of hits, or I want to be like known like Nike or Coca-Cola? Do you have people that have that thought and not so much about revenue?
Well, that's kind of a two-part answer. That's what we call branding. And so
Okay.
in search engine optimization as well as websites, it's very important to always consider branding, and because brands are important. Just like your brand, Positive Polarity. People come to recognize that that goes with a lot of equity. You are very well known as being an excellent coach. You're very well known as being trustworthy. You're very well known for having a brand that is building a community not only in southeastern Wisconsin but worldwide. So that brand is important. But when you talk about driving revenue, it may not necessarily have a one-to-one relationship.
Right.
So for instance, if on your website, if you offer something that is valuable to consumers, but if they don't know your brand, they may be skeptical to take a look at it.
Sure.
However, if somebody's familiar with Positive Polarity and you built a good community, a good brand, if you put out a new PDF, they might say, "Oh, I've seen good stuff before," and they'll open it. So they kind of
So
work hand in hand.
Okay. Well, and this is so train me on this one because I hear the word branding here, Eric, and I'm thinking like these multi-billion dollar people branding Coca-Cola, branding Nike, where you see a swoosh and you automatically think Nike, right? Well, the 99.99% of the people listening right now around the planet, they don't have that type of budget. So I'm a black or white thinker. So I'm like, forget branding, okay, because I can't do it. So help me and help the listeners because I'm guessing a lot of people think they don't have the funding to do branding. So how does that work?
Well, so that's a great question. And when I say brand, so like when you look at it from organic traffic, and let me go back, I want to take a step back because some of the stuff that you were talking about is you mentioned a lot of things like organic and Google Analytics and things. Search engine optimization, there are a lot of things that are confusing about it, but one of the most fundamental parts of it is understanding that websites derive traffic from four different sources. They derive it from direct traffic. So if you give somebody your business card, they look at your website and they click on that domain, that's considered traffic that's directly coming to your website. There's
Okay.
referral traffic. If if I have a link on positive polarity Milwaukee or positivepolarity.com and it goes to Silver Fox MKE, any traffic that goes there is considered referral traffic.
Okay.
The third is paid. If Silver Fox MKE does paid advertising, somebody clicks on one of those paid ads, that gets attributed to paid. The
Okay.
fourth is called organic. And
Okay.
organic traffic is basically called that because when somebody goes into Google and they type in a search, like I'm looking for an SEO specialist, if somebody clicks Silver Fox MKE, that traffic came organically because Google felt that the page that they provided organically met the needs of the query by the user.
Okay.
So understanding that is where it's important to understand brand. So with any type of keyword, say if I'm looking for SEO specialist, if it's got something with my name in it, like Silver Fox, if somebody's looking for Silver Fox SEO specialist, that's a branded term. And there's no companies that maybe aren't huge, but they're moderately successful, maybe $1 million, $2 million company where people get familiar with their product. So my last company that I worked at was called Tekra, and they did plastic manufacturing. And a lot of companies would see the products that they knew that we sold, and they would see Tekra next to it, and it would have a high click-through rate because our brand was familiar with them and they trusted it. So you don't necessarily have to look at necessarily like a McDonald's or a Nike or a Starbucks. You can look at medium to decent sized companies and they still have brand recognition with their customers.
So I'm curious because like that plastics place, if you pipe that in, like there's all this confusion, and this is where I as a business owner, I don't want to deal with this. I want the phone to ring. So
Yes.
tell me, is that where you come in? Because the back room stuff, yeah, there's certain people listening right now, Eric, that want to know all the intricacies of all this. But you talked about four things, and I can't even, paid,
Paid
paid,
referral,
paid referral,
direct.
direct, and organic, right?
Yep.
I mean, let's just be real. You probably geek out on those. You love that stuff. I'm in a different world. I don't care about that. All
Yep.
I want to do is get the phone to ring. So am I able to say, "Hey, Eric, what's the return on this? I want to invest some money with you, but I want to get something back," because this is another fear that I think a lot of people have is that you invest money but you don't see a return. And that's where how do you talk about like revenue as a return? If I want to give you $10 to invest or $10,000 to invest in whatever you think I should invest in to grow my business, how do some what do I see in return for that? How do we get the phone to ring with 10 grand? And I'm just using that number
Yeah.
facetiously.
I think that's a great question. So when you look at search engine optimization, one of the things that I really was drawn to SEO for was because whatever work you put into it, it lasts for a really long time. If you do paid search or paid advertising, as soon as you turn off those paid ads, the phone stops ringing from them. Search engine optimization, if I modify somebody's website, that could benefit them for years. And
Okay.
so it's really important with search engine optimization that people understand that it will drive revenue, but sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. So when I work with somebody, if somebody came to me and said, yeah, I want to invest in doing SEO, I want you to come and audit our site and then do optimization. The first thing I'd want to explain to them is the process that I go through, and then also help them understand how long it takes. Generally, if you have a website and you optimize it in October, you may not see results till December, January, maybe even February, because Google's got to index it, and then they've got to determine whether the content you have is better than the content that they're currently serving. So one of the things that it's important for people to understand is what the expectation should be. And so what I try to do is I try to give steps to people so that they understand that first, our goal is to get a page indexed by Google. That means it's being actually shown on Google, whether it's shown on the 100th page or it's shown on the first page. It's in Google's index. The
Okay.
second thing is how well the page is performing. Are people actually going to that page? And once we can see that they're getting visits, are they converting? And that's where the phone rings. And it's kind of a process, and it can sometimes take a couple weeks, sometimes it can take several months. Depends on how difficult the competitive environment is for the page that they're looking for. So I'll give you an example in law, where if you do search engine optimization for a law firm, it's a very competitive landscape. It may take a year for you to get any results because it's so competitive.
Wow. So, wow. So how does, I mean, so you're saying, I just want to repeat what I just heard. It might take a year for me of investing money in this search engine optimization concept before the phone will actually ring because of the money that we put into that. Is that what you're saying?
No, not exactly. What I'm saying is that you could, if the environment is competitive,
Hmm.
it could take that long
Sure. Okay.
for if you're in a very highly competitive uh, situation like a law firm where
Yep.
they are spending. If you look at like in Wisconsin, we have a lawyer, Gruber Law Office. They spend millions on marketing. If you're trying to compete with a company like that, it could
Yeah.
take a year. But
Okay.
for most businesses, it's probably going to take a couple months at
Sure.
most. I've got
Okay.
customers that I've optimized, and within a month, they're starting to see some traction, and the phone may ring occasionally, and then after a couple months, the phone is starting to ring. They're starting to get leads from the website. So that was probably an extreme example.
Sure.
So
Sure. Okay. No, and I get that. And so I want to kind of parlay off what you just said because I want to make sure I'm understanding and the listener is as well. Because so we do this SEO thing and we get in alignment with Google and we invest some energy, whether it's money, time, or both. How do we know that the phone is ringing, Eric, because of that? I mean, I guess that's an interesting question that I've never quite understood because I have a website and it's got a phone number, which is our main phone number. And if somebody calls and says, I want to talk to you about business coaching, and I say, oh, that's be happy to. Where did you get our information? Nobody has ever said in my recollection, no one's ever said that I found you online, or no one's ever said that I looked you up. There's always a connection of somebody.
yeah,
So how in the world would I know if I started investing money in this, or the listener, how do they know that that lead is that ROI is coming from the work that you and I've done together rather than something that I did outside of my SEO?
so there's a couple of things with websites, and you mentioned Google Analytics. You can
Hmm.
actually see when somebody when somebody, what's called a conversion. So if you
Okay.
have on your website, if you have a contact us form or you have a request for quote, you can see who converted. You can't see the specific person, but you can see what the source was. Did they come from referral traffic? Did they come from organic? Did they come from paid search? Did they come from social media? You can see all that in analytics.
Okay.
Phone calls are a little bit different. They're a little bit harder to track because Google does have a little bit of a challenge because not everybody calls from their computer. If they're calling from their phone, it's a little bit
Sure.
easier to do that. But there's call tracking software that
Okay.
that I use with most of the websites that I work on, and that will actually tell you what source that one came from. So you can identify with almost 95% accuracy where somebody got the information, and you don't even have to ask anymore.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Well, and again, getting the phone to ring is part of it. The sale equals revenue. We're talking about how to get that revenue piece in there. So, when you start working with companies or when you talk to companies, are a lot of people kind of in the dark on the SEO thing? Because I personally wouldn't know the first thing to tell somebody, as far as what keywords, what ad, there's all this stuff. So for a novice listening right now, Eric, what would be kind of like, where would they start? Where would be a place that we would kind of start? Maybe do some things even on our own, like get a Google, get your own Google business profile. Where do you normally start in this thing?
So I'm going to answer that in a couple different ways.
Sure.
One, if somebody just wants to start, I would say go to YouTube. YouTube
Okay.
is an excellent resource. You can go on there and you can type in, how do I do keyword research? How do I optimize the website? You can get a lot of the basics right away. And so YouTube is an easy platform to find because they in the last 2 years they've really started doing shorts, which are like 30 seconds, 60 seconds. So if people like to consume shorts, it's easier to get that data. If somebody
Okay.
likes to read more than watch videos, just going on a variety of places like Search Engine Land, semrush.com, those two places have great resources for learning about SEO. Now, the
Well,
second part I
search
wanted to,
engine land, did you
yeah,
say, Eric?
it's called search,
Searchengineland.com.
yep, searchengineland.com and semrush.com. And both of those tools, both of those websites have a lot of resources that are really good for learning about beginning SEO. Another one, which is also a really good one, is called Moz, M as in Mary, O, Z as in zebra.com. And they have a lot of resources that for somebody who's beginning in SEO and wants to learn about it, great places to learn.
Okay.
Now,
Awesome.
the second part is if they wanted to work with an SEO specialist. One of the things that I would say is that if you talk to somebody, you want to make sure that they speak in language that you can understand. Most, like you said when you open this podcast, there's a lot of confusing topics. There's a lot of things. People like me, I love everything about SEO. I love websites. I've looked at thousands of websites in my career. I I geek out on it, so I love it. But if I can't explain, or anybody that your listeners would use, if they can't explain what they're doing in terms that you can understand, you shouldn't work with them because you're not going to be able to understand what they're doing. And
Yeah.
so the first thing whenever I work with a customer is I want to understand their business. I want to understand what is important for their revenue sources. And I want them to know the processes that I'm going to follow. Because if they don't understand what I'm doing and what they're paying me for, it's not going to be a fruitful relationship for both of us. So that's really where I start.
Okay. Well, and I think that's a really great spot for people to really think about, because I've been in meetings with my clients and SEO people like you that are talking in, terms that neither one of us understood. And we always had to help us get explanation and things like that. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to kind of talk about, how to increase traffic to your site. I want to talk about maybe some things not to do on the SEO piece. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Eric Valley, the Silver Fox Milwaukee owner, and I'm the Blonde Fox owner here. So we're hanging out. We're fighting crime today. We are finding ways to fight through all this paranoia and get right to the revenue piece, because let's just be real. Most business owners and entrepreneurs, at the end of the day, we need revenue to keep this engine moving forward. So revenue does equal increasing traffic to your site. So let's kind of start there. If I'm listening right now and I have, I don't know what's an average number of visits a day, 100 visits a day, 10, I don't know what good, 1,000. I don't know what, is a good number, but I have a number of people coming to my site. I want to start with, before I get into my next piece, let's just say I want to increase traffic to my site. I just want to have more eyes on my site. What are some tips that you have here, Eric, to help that person listening get that to happen?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. I think the first thing is to understand what type of content you have, because most people, when they hear SEO, and a lot of people are familiar with SEO at a higher level, and that it's an important concept. But one of the things that people are also familiar with is when you say SEO, the first thing that comes to mind is keywords. But one of the things to think about is what type of content you have on your website. If you have like a product, like you are a best-selling author, if you're putting your book on there, that would be a product page. So
Okay.
you want to find keywords that have transactional intent. And what that means is, what's the cost of this book? Is it a bestseller? I'm looking for uh, books about business leadership. Things that are transactional in nature are best for product pages. Where
Okay.
if you release a video or a blog about how to become better at communicating with others, you're looking for more informational type of topics or keywords. And those keywords are designed for people who are looking for educational, like, how do I understand a personality conflict? How do I get around a personality conflict? What are types of personality conflicts? So these are more educational in intent. So
Okay.
understanding when you do keyword research, it's not just about finding a keyword that matches the words that you have on the page, but also looking for the correct intent. And once you find that, that's one of the things that you want to work to incorporate into the page so that you can get higher visibility in Google for that page.
So education, and what was the first one that you talked about?
So the first one was transactional.
Transactional. So does can you have one or the other, or can you have both on your site? Is it okay to have a spot where you
Absolutely.
educate and then a spot where you transact?
Yeah, and there's really three types. There's navigational, transactional, and informational.
Okay.
Navigational is if you're looking to go to a Starbucks and you put in Starbucks near me because you're driving around, you want to grab a coffee.
Okay.
Starbucks near me is navigational. Informational, again, is a higher intent that somebody is looking to learn. How do I fix a lawnmower? How do I unclog my sink? Those type of things are going to lead to informational things. Where if I look at transactional, it would be, how much is a plumber going to cost? What's the hourly rate for a plumber? So
Gotcha.
looking at the intent behind the keywords is really important to match that up. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have an informational keyword on a product page, or vice versa. You can have transactional. You can have transactional type words that it's not mutually exclusive. It's just your best to try to figure out what the intent is.
So navigate, educate, and transact. Something in
Yeah,
those realms are the three things. So again, for the novice that doesn't really understand that piece, I'm assuming what you said earlier, Eric, was that you then look at a website from that position. you look at something like if, somebody called you and said, hey, I'm not getting the traffic that I want, which is probably a pretty common problem, or I want more, however they started. You look at it from those three perspectives, and then you kind of give them a report and say, hey, 80% is this, or what happens once you look at that website and you have kind of looked at it from those three perspective. What's the next step then?
Well, yeah, let me give you an example. So if I work with a company and say they build widgets and they have metal widgets, plastic widgets, and wood widgets, but they also have a blog about how to use widgets and purposes of widgets. Well,
Okay.
when I looked at the metal widget pages and the plastic widget pages, I would look for transactional keywords because those are going to have a higher likelihood of making the phone ring.
Okay.
If I'm looking at their blog, I'm looking for educational because I'm looking to bring people in that maybe they're not ready to buy. Maybe they're not ready to call or fill out an RFQ, but
Sure.
eventually they will if I can get them interested in coming to my site. So that's what I mean when I look at the website. I try to look at what the intent of the website page is and then try to match that with the right keyword.
So does buying cycle come into this? Because I'm thinking about, House of Harley's a great client of mine and they sell Harley bikes. They're probably having a longer buying cycle than your idea of a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do those two, we have to kind of treat those two websites different then, I'm assuming as well?
Not necessarily. So with search engine optimization, it's really ongoing. If I
Okay.
do work, if say I'm working with House of Harley and they tell me that in the summer, in June of next year, they're going to have a huge new line of clothing that's coming out and they want to
Okay.
promote it.
Okay.
I need to look at that probably 4 months in advance that I can start getting the content developed for that so that I can be ready that my web pages are actually starting to link are starting to get indexed and starting to get traffic to them when they launch. So
Okay.
the buying cycle isn't necessarily as critical with that because it's really still just trying to get the phone to ring. So it's not necessarily the buying cycle, but there is ways to time things. But one of the things that I do want to mention is that with a lot of websites that I see, and one of the blind spots that I think some organizations may suffer from is they get the phone to ring, and then what happens?
Okay.
And
Sure.
so one of the things that I see is probably 60% of web leads that, and that's somebody fills in an RFQ form or a contact us form, don't get responded to within 5 days. And if you look at how our world has been influenced by Amazon, you can go
Sure.
on Amazon, Dave, this morning, and you can put a query in for a new item and have it delivered that same day.
Yeah.
People have an instant gratification need. So
Sure.
the one thing that I encourage people to do is when people respond to your website by either calling or if they leave a RFQ form or fill it out, take the time to get back to them as soon as possible. Even if it's just to say, we got your message and we're looking into it. We're going to give you a call back within a day. If you have something urgent, call me at this number. Because when somebody knows that they've reached somebody, they're less likely to go to the competition.
Yeah, wow. That's really well said, and that's where come in because we do a lot of work, Eric. I tell my clients, hey, call Eric. He'll get the phone to ring, and then once the phone rings, then we jump in because we
Yep.
talk about customer experience. We talk about sales training and things like that. It just happened to me yesterday. And it was our anniversary yesterday, my wife and I bought flowers for her, and I won't mention the name of who it was. I want to, but I'm not going to do it. So I order them days in advance. It wasn't like the same day. Give them the address. Everything's a go. I get an email that says they're out for delivery, which life is great. and my wife happened to work from home yesterday, and I'm like, did anything come? Because like four
Yeah.
o'clock, I hear nothing, right? And then I'm like, and then I got an email that said your package was delivered. So I'm like, excellent. So she's probably working at her desk. I said, hey, has anything come from Office Depot today? And she's like, nah, let me check. And she goes out, no, there's no packages. I'm like, what? So I call this floral place and they said, we're here to serve,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. Um, and I had to sit on hold forever. And they finally said, the recording said, we're experiencing a delay. Please just give us your number and we'll call you back. Well, they never call back. 5 hours
Oh,
later, they never call back. Now we're at 9 o'clock. We're getting home from dinner. And all of a sudden at the front door was the flowers unboxed and warm. So I
uh,
know that they got delivered to a neighbor. And then the neighbor, when they got home, found it and just happened to give it to us. But even to this day, 24 hours later, approximately, no call back. So you can get that phone to ring, but like you just said, if you have a bad experience on the back end, I'm not using that place anymore. And I've
right.
been a loyal customer. And you know what? Never called us back. I emailed them, never responded. So, you know what, you guys that are listening, if you don't think that the customer experience matters once Eric gets the phone to ring, this is where the disconnect happens. He can crush it to get that phone to ring, and then the phone rings and nothing happens. And
Yeah.
like he just said, we can order something 5 hours later, it shows up from Amazon. I'm like, sunglasses the same day, screwdriver. I mean, the stuff that they got, I feel like they have it somewhere buried in my backyard. They get it
Yeah.
so darn quick, you know? But please make sure that your customer experience is in line with, the expectation. Which brings up another question, because if the phone does ring, we have to make sure we're ready for that onslaught. We have to be able to support that. So I'm just curious, have you seen, like, can you predict about how much of an increase of phone to ring? What kind of numbers? Because I saw some interesting statistics on your website, but what kind of research comes to the top when you're talking about this kind of stuff?
Well, first, I want to say congratulations on your anniversary. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Yep,
How long
we're
have
we're
you been married?
blessed.
How long?
16 years yesterday.
Oh,
So, yep,
congratulations. That's awesome.
yep,
So with regard to how much traffic you can estimate, it's very difficult to do that. It depends on the site. If
yeah,
a site is established and has a lot of uh, it's known very well by Google. It's got a lot of other websites that have linked to it. It's got a lot of content. It, that might be, if I can optimize that site, I might be able to drive a lot of traffic fairly quickly. Where if it's a brand new website, Google doesn't know them. They don't have a lot of what we call links that go from one website to another. It may take longer because we've got to build a trust. It's not much different than if you network. And
okay,
you're very familiar with networking. When you go up and meet somebody for the first time and you have coffee with them, you tell them about your business, they tell you about their needs, you may be able to get a contract right away, but most likely it's going to take another 2 or 3 visits before they begin to see who you are and they trust
sure,
you. It's
yep,
no different with Google. Google wants to see how other people have looked at your website. And so, if, say, for instance, if Positive Polarity does well with business coaching, and Google will see when people go on a browser, are they going in and interacting with the website, or are they just going in and leaving right away? And
okay,
so Google wants to build trust because they want to be seen as the expert uh, browser or the expert search engine, so that you're not going to DuckDuckGo or Brave uh, search engine or Bing.
sure.
Google wants you to use them, so they try to deliver the best results as possible. So Google wants to trust you before that you can get a lot of visits.
Wow. I tell you, there's so much here. And again, like I said, for me being super simple, I just want more revenue, you know? So I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't need to know all this. So that's why, again, there's experts like you that are out. As we start to land the plane today, Eric, I want to ask you another question because all of a sudden artificial intelligence is kind of showing up, right? And
Yep.
this AI, the chat GBT, all this stuff is kind of slowly permeating the web. How does that affect the SEO and the job that you have to do? What are some things that we should be looking for there?
Well, in some ways it's making it more difficult. In some ways it's making it easier. Um, AI, you can do a lot of things that 5 years ago you had to do manually, and like compiling a lot of data and things, you had to do that manually. Now you can use AI to do that for you with if you understand the prompts. It does make SEO a little bit more challenging in that now that they're using AI. So if you ask a question, they're using AI to try to answer it, which makes it harder for websites that do informational type of content. It's making it a little bit more challenging for those to rank and to get
Yeah.
visits to their website. So I would say the one thing that people really should really be focused on with AI is if you try to use AI for content, and it's not necessarily prohibited by Google to do that, but what they really prefer is that even though you have AI help you with your content, they still want human oversight. And what that means is you have an expert that does it. So with I'll use the example of positive polarity. If you say, Eric, could you write an article for me on business coaching? And so I write this article using AI and I get it to you, and you're like, oh, this looks great. I'm just going to throw it on the website, and there we go.
Yeah.
Well, Google knows how to recognize AI content because AI content uses they have certain rhythms, they use certain keywords. It's very easy for Google to identify that. What
Okay.
they want is they want Dave Melenda to use his expertise to look over that article and say, yeah, this isn't accurate, or how does Dave Melenda put his stamp on it so that
Sure.
actually it makes it more real. It
Yeah.
adds something that an AI can't do, and that's you've had years working with many customers, and you've learned valuable lessons that AI doesn't have. So
Sure.
when people look at AI, always have human interaction looking at that, and what we call subject matter experts reviewing the content before you put it on your website.
So you can't just put it on. That's interesting. I didn't even realize that. So if I go ahead and create my own site, if I'm one of those listening right now that kind of manages or built their own site, and then I want to use AI as a kind of a cheat sheet to help me with content, what I'm hearing you say is that Google knows that. And does that kind of negatively affect their ranking then when it comes to getting it floating to the top, so to speak?
Well, we're still kind of because AI is still fairly new. I think ChatGPT came out in November of 2022. So we're
Okay,
still seeing how Google is handling that. What one thing that we do know for sure is Google doesn't want people to scale using AI. And what that means is if the positive polarity website has 25 pages on it, and you decide next week you come up with all these topics, you brainstorm 500 topics, and you throw them into ChatGPT and it comes up with 500 articles, and you throw them all on your website,
sure.
that's considering scaling. And you're scaling with AI because you can probably do that in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And Google does not want to do that. And there are people that have been doing that. And Google does
Yeah,
not want that to happen because what occurs then is you're basically AI, while it's fantastic, it generally is creating the same output. If you ask the exact same prompt and I ask the exact same prompt, our information is not going to be that different. However, if I ask you, Dave, can you write an article about business coaching? And Eric, can you write an article about business coaching?
yeah,
It's going to
sure,
be vastly different.
sure,
And that's
sure.
what they want. They want different content because that's how they're going to get better results.
Wow, that's so cool. Um, Two last questions, and I'm gonna let you go. What would your tip of the day be, Eric, for somebody listening? Maybe it's something that we talked about, maybe it's something that we haven't, but for somebody listening, what's a tip for you, a simple tip of the day that somebody can walk away and use right away?
I would say that one of the most important things that a lot of people miss is Google Business Profile. And if you have a business that is that gets customers from the local area, you want to make sure that you have a Google Business Profile. And if you don't know what it is, you can just go into Google and type it up and it'll give you an explanation. It's basically a mini website that Google hosts, and it provides basic information about hours, products that you offer, services that you offer. It includes your phone number, your address. It's free to set up. Companies like me, I also offer that as a service. I will build somebody a Google Business Profile, but I would say if you have if you have a business, make sure that you have it, and then make sure that you own it. And all you have to do is just click on. There's a thing in there that says own this website. You click on it, and you'll see if it's owned. If it's not owned, click on it and own it, because
Okay.
a lot of people they see it, they're like, well, my company's on there, but
Yeah.
if you don't own it, somebody else can own it, and then they can make the changes that you want. But you always want to have it because it's a free service and it does drive calls.
So if people listening don't know, Eric, if they have it, they go to Google and what isn't it? Don't you normally just Google your company name and then
Yes.
either it shows up on the right there or it doesn't? Is that how that would work?
Yeah, Dave, that's exactly right. So if you go into Google and you type in the name of your company and the city that it's located in, and you hit enter, it should come up on the right side. That I
Okay.
say should because it doesn't always. But
Okay.
sometimes like Silver Fox MKE, my official title is Silver Fox MKE LLC. So
Okay.
sometimes Google may not recognize it just by Silver Fox MKE. They may want that LLC in order for me to get the Google Business Profile. But it's something that's free, and I mean, it doesn't cost anything to have, and it allows you to put your hours, you can get reviews on it. It's just a
Sure.
great tool.
Gotcha. Awesome. If somebody's listening today, Eric, and they've this has inspired them to do a little bit of inventory of their social media world or whatever, or like me, where I just want more revenue, how you do whatever you do behind the scene, Eric, I don't really care. You go and do what you do. I'll do what I do. But if somebody's listening and they want to learn more or want to connect with you, what's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah, thank you for giving me that opportunity. The best way for somebody is to go to my website, and that's www.silverfoxmke.com. And I have my phone number on there. I have a contact form on there. They can fill it out if they have any questions about the things we talked about. If they're looking to figure out they can't find their Google Business Profile, I'm happy to help them out.
Awesome. And MKE stands for Milwaukee, right? I'm assuming
Correct.
because you're out
Yeah,
of
and
Milwaukee.
yeah, and I have gray hair, so it's something that I found that I wanted a good brand, and so when I go out and I see people, they'll remember that. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, you are the Silver Fox," and I put MKE because 95% of my business comes from southeastern Wisconsin. I have a few clients in other states, but most of mine comes from the southeastern Wisconsin, so that's why I go with MKE.
Awesome. Perfect. So again, for you listening today, hopefully we've talked about something that kind of spurred you on. I'm relieved to know that I don't have to worry about all these words because I look at all this stuff and as it gets more complicated, I'm get farther and farther behind in technology. So all I do is rely on people like Eric to be able to deal with it. So if you're listening and you're an entrepreneur business owner and all you care about is the R word revenue, just keep with that. You don't have to change, but align yourself with somebody that can help because it's so much easier to align yourself with people that know this, that do it every single day. So again, thank you, Eric, so much for hanging out. with us. I know that I have a Google business profile, so I'm happy there. And again, thank you for all that you're doing and making simplicity out of this confusion, because it's way too confusing. So I'm just going to say, hey, let's just work on the revenue piece. You do what you do, and I'll do what I do. So again, thanks for all your information today, and can't wait to keep learning from you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on.